In 1974, a group of prominent community leaders became convinced the county government could become a more active and far-sighted partner in the improvement of the community if the form of government of the county were changed from what was considered a weak form of administration, the commissioner form, to a strong mayor form of government. So writes Dr. Judith Lynch, who played a critical role in the historic change to Erie County government in Pennsylvania. She writes that in her fourth installment in her series, examining the history of women elected in Erie County. And that's what we'll discuss here in this conversation. The times, how they were a changing, and the folks instrumental in that change, including women elected in Erie County. One of them, our guest here, she's amongst them. Hello and welcome to the Jefferson Educational Society's digital programming. I'm Ben Spagan and I'm the vice president at the Jefferson and am a contributing editor at the Erie Reader. And in this conversation, the fourth part of Dr. Lynch's series, we'll look at the 1970s and government in Erie. So joining me for this conversation is JES scholar in residence, Dr. Judith Lynch, who's been writing about the history of Erie County's elected women. Her writings are available for free download at jeserie.org. Now, a bit about Dr. Lynch before we get started. She began her time at the JES as the first chair of the think tank's Board of Trustees, and she remains on that board today. She served as the inaugural director of the Jefferson Civic Leadership Academy in 2015 and was named the Jefferson's Decadian Scholar in 2018. Amongst her many accomplishments, she spent time in academia, serving as an associate professor of political science and history at Mercyhurst University, and prior taught at Allegheny College, where she was also a part of the Civic Engagement Institute there. She was a 5-term county executive in Erie, but before that, she was the first woman elected to Erie County's new county council, and we'll talk about that today, and how she was also instrumental in drafting the Erie County Home Rule Charter, also on the docket for discussion today. Dr. Lynch also worked as an analyst for the CIA and taught 13 years at Villa Marie High School. She received her doctorate with distinction in political science in 2001 from the University of Pittsburgh and her master's degree in social studies from Gannon University. Her undergraduate degree, a bachelor's in history and political science, is from George Washington University. For those looking to read the first 3 installments and this latest one, the fourth one, or to get refreshed on them, please do head over to jeserie.org. There you'll find videos too that you can stream on demand, where Dr. Lynch and I discuss parts 1, 2, and 3 of her series. Now, if you're just joining us here for the first time, rest assured you won't be lost if you haven't gotten to those writings or videos just yet. Now, since this program is first airing live on the Jefferson's Facebook page, we'll work our way through as many questions from you, the viewers, as we can as we host this event. If you have a question, just leave it in the comments section below. Now, if you're watching or listening to a later broadcast of this event, please still send us your questions and comments, and we'll get them along to Dr. Lynch, and we can talk about them in upcoming programs so that we ensure that we keep the conversations going. And of course, for more information about upcoming Jefferson Educational Society programs and publications, do visit that website, jeserie.org, and be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Dr. Judith Lynch, thank you for joining me for part 4 of this conversation.
Oh, my pleasure, Ben.
So, Dr. Lynch, I started the first installments with this, and I'll start this one as well. Again, just thanking you for writing this series and being a part of these conversations. Your work is undoubtedly helping to ensure history is told and studied in full. So we are grateful for this. And in fact, in last episode, we found that this is the first time we've been able to actually create a chart featuring all of the elected women in Erie County, county and city government. And what a groundbreaking opportunity. We're so grateful to have that. And we're so grateful to have you back here to talk about part 4, which you begin talking about Sarah McQuitty. And you begin it with the note that she is leaving office in 1964. From then until 1974, 10 years, there were no elected women serving in Erie County or city of Erie government. What explains this dearth?
I wish I could explain it. Of course, you know, the 60s from 64 to 74 were a time of turmoil, and that also included Erie County. But for whatever reason, all of that turmoil did not just percolate into a number of women who decided to run for elective office. It was not until 1974 that you get a woman running for elective office in Erie County.
It's shocking to find that one of the things we talked about in the last episode, and I don't want to necessarily go into depth rehashing it here, is we do see the movements. We see the first wave, the second wave, and the third wave. And so it's interesting to see that as we're in essence beginning that second wave in the 60s through the 70s, that's when we're experiencing a dearth. And I think that that's a really interesting thing that you take a look at in this fourth part, which I do want to encourage people to read, and is available for free download at jeserie.org. In this latest installment, you do focus on the change to Erie County government, but you acknowledge that in context of the city. The city of Erie changed its governmental structure nearly 2 decades before the county did. So Dr. Lynch, take us to 1959 in the city of Erie. Change is a happening.
What I think is important here is that change is not something that the people of Erie, both the city and the county, are unfamiliar with, that they were a participant and also a very affirmative participant in the 1959 effort to change the commission form of government, or the weak mayor form of government in the city of Erie, to a strong mayor form of government in the city of Erie. So this is what the voters of the city of Erie decided in 1959. And of course, there was a corresponding change in 1974.
And just for those of us that might need the refresher, and maybe we missed it in our high school studies, or maybe it was eroded from high school education when we took it and wasn't there at all. But Dr. Lynch, give us that civics lesson really quickly. When we say weak mayor form of government, when we say strong mayor form, when we say commission form, what exactly are we looking at here?
Well, up until 1959, the city of Erie was electing mayors, but the mayor was part of the city council. And the executive functions of city government were divided among the members of city council. So there was not a separation of the executive from the legislative functions. They were both housed in council, and so therefore it was called the weak mayor form of government. As you know, on the national level and on the state level, we have the separation of powers, and you have a single elected executive, that would be the president, and on the state level, it is a governor, and they have the executive powers of government. Where there is of course, a legislature in both the state and the federal government, and they have the legislative powers of government.
I really appreciate that quick civics lesson, Dr. Lynch, for those who might need that to understand that. Real quickly before we move on, because I think this helps context set what we're about to talk about in county government, real quickly on the commissioner form. And so that's much more common. We see that compared to what we have now. And we'll get into what we have now with the county executive and the county council and unpack all of that and how it happened. But commissioner form, again, we're looking at bodies being blended, right? We've got 3 folks who are doing it all instead of one and a council, one executive and a council.
Now, here we're talking about county government, and it's a commissioner form of government. So 3 commissioners are elected at different times. One of those commissioners had to be of a different party. And they, of course, had the full executive powers of county government. They were not separated. There was no separation of powers. It was a commission form of government. And that's the county that we're speaking of now.
Right, and so Dr. Lynch, I want to go back to that quote from your 4th installment in this series, looking at elected women in Erie County, Pennsylvania, and looking at the women's movements, especially as we are in the centennial year of having passed the 19th Amendment. So appropriate that we're discussing this and reflecting back on 100 years and change and what has happened then. I want to go back to that quote that I started with from you, where you write that in 1974, a group of prominent community leaders became convinced that county government could become more active and far-sighted partner, a more active and far-sighted partner in the improvement of the community if the form of the government of the county were changed from what was considered weak then to something considered strong. At this time, only 4 other counties had gone through this process. This is big change that we're talking about, right?
Yes, it is. And it's interesting that those counties were not adjacent to Erie County. They were largely in the southern part of the state: Luzerne, Northampton, Lehigh, and Lackawanna. These were the counties that had gone before the county of Erie and had adopted a home rule charter and largely separated the powers of executive and legislative and had a strong executive.
And it's not overnight that we often see such big change occur. And we see Erie at this time, Erie residents being thoughtful about this process. Can you walk us through the home rule process and its sequences, how things got started, what had to happen, and the build up to, of course, that 11-member commission?
Well, this is a convoluted process. To some extent might appear very simple, but it had a lot of things that had to happen congruently. So first of all, you had to have a referendum on the ballot. And the referendum, of course, asked the voters if they wanted to have a home rule study commission to look into the government, to study the government of the County of Erie. But what compounded it was at the same time, there were those that determined that they wanted to run for election and be on the study commission, and their names were also on the ballot. And when this occurred, there were 76 names on the ballot for choice of 11 positions on the Home Rule Study Commission. So the question was, would the voters vote for the Home Rule Study Commission? And then when they did, who would they select out of the 76 people that were running? Who would they select to be part of the study commission?
And of that 11-member commission, because the residents do vote to approve this, they want to move forward and they do vote on the 11-member commission. Two of those members are women. Let's start with Mary Lamry. Tell us about Miss Lamry.
Mary Lamry was, of course, a school district, a member of the board of Erie School District, and she had really attained some prominence because at the same time that this was going on, there was a real question. You remember, this is in the early 70s now. The question was about busing and integration of the school system in the city of Erie. Mary Lamry was on the Human Relations Commission. She was in favor of busing and the integration. It put her at odds with some of the others that were on the school commission, and also with the director of the school, or the superintendent of the schools.
And Mary actually runs into a little bit of trouble on a late night TV show. Tell us about that episode.
This is so funny, okay? Because she's already been elected as school director. She's already in the process of making a name for herself. But the school board makes a decision to join a conference that is going on in California. So she attends that conference at the cost of the school district. And one of the things that they do is they attend a kind of a television broadcast where Jerry Lewis is there. And who is the other?
Isn't it Johnny Carson is
Johnny
part
Carson,
of this
course,
as
he's
well?
the big guy. He's the big guy. And so Mary says to them, oh, well, you've heard about the mistake on the lake, haven't you? You know where that is. And Johnny Carson says, no, doesn't have any idea. So she said, well, it's where Bob Hope was married. And she said, well, that must have been the mistake. He said, that's got to be the mistake. And she said, oh, no, it's Erie. That is the mistake on the lake. Well, you can imagine that there are all sorts of people in the city of Erie who find that very offensive. Although she was kidding, she was having fun. It was a night out, but it was not taken as such by the people of the city of Erie. But they forgave her.
They did.
It
And in
certainly
fact,
seemed to forgive.
they,
And she ran successfully and was elected to the Home Rule Study Commission.
and we can certainly see why a lot of folks, if Erie had not been on such a national stage before, and you have somebody giving the time and platform to talk about your hometown, your place, and doing it in such a way we can see. But I think it shows Erie's resilience and forgiveness as she's elected onto the commission. She's not run out of town. People don't tell her to call somewhere else your hometown and move to a different mistake on the lake or whatnot. So we do see that forgiveness. We see her moving on. So she's part of this commission. The other woman, because I said there were two women elected to this 11-member commission. The other woman of those two, Dr. Lynch, it's you. You're on the commission.
It is really me, but the other person I'd like to talk about first is Jane Klopke.
Because actually, that's such a great note, because you note that she's actually part of the commission too, but yet there's only 2 women elected. So,
Right.
Judy, how does that happen?
Well, Elliot Lefevre, and many people in our viewing audience would remember Elliot Lefevre, and he was the highest vote getter of these 76 people who ran for the Erie County Government State Study Commission. But at the first meeting, he indicated that he was going to be resigning because he had received something that he had been seeking, a principalship, but it was in the Reading School District, some distance away. So he could not continue to be a member of the Erie County Government Study Commission. Elliot Lefevre then recommended the appointment of Jane Klopke. Now, Jane Klopke had been 13th. There were 11 to be elected, and I guess she was 12th. She was the 12th in terms of total votes. And so he turned to her, and he turned to the members of the commission and made the recommendation and the nomination that Jane Klopke be accepted as a member of the Erie County Government Study Commission.
And it's so interesting to see that turn of events, because amidst the resignation, the commission is now appointing chairs and vice chairs. So who's at the helm and who's at the vice helm?
Well, first of all, I want to say a little bit more about Jane Klopke, because the reason why she was so prominent is that she had been a leader in the League of Women Voters. And even today, we see the League taking a very prominent leadership position in urging people to vote, making sure that people have all of the information, that they actually plan their vote. So the League of Women Voters at this time, and this was in 1974, and it continues to be a leading civic organization in our community. So Jane Klopke had been in the leadership position of this, and that's one of the reasons why she was 12th in terms of the total membership. She also was from Northeast, and I really think the members of the study commission believed that since approval had to come from the total electorate, not just from the city of Erie, but the total electorate of Erie County, that would be very good to have somebody from Northeast on the panel. And in addition, her family had been had a pretty high prominent position in Northeast. They had run a men's clothing store for many years, and that was on West Main Street, I believe. So Jane Klopke was nominated and accepted as a member of the Erie County Government Study Commission.
And so there you have the 11 members, but amidst those, I want to go back to that question and press you on it, Judy, because we know who the vice chair is. I think, people might get what I'm hinting at because it was you. But we also appointed chair, Irving's Old Murphy, who I've heard you lecture about often when you're talking about Erie history. So just tell us a little bit about the process of this 11-member commission deciding to install a chair and a vice chair, and then move forward with the process, because actually this took some time. This happened between 1974, up through 1976. And then we finally see everything going to ballot in 76. So in order to get that moving, we've got to have the chair and the vice chair. Tell us a little bit about that process of getting those installed, and then the work that lied ahead in terms of what came over the course of that next year or so as you marched from 74 up to 76 and getting this on the ballot.
Well, Elliot Lefevre was nominated for chairman, but evidently and obviously he could not accept it because he was resigning his commission, being on the Erie County Home Rule Study Commission, who he suggested that the committee choose as their chairman was Irving Olds Murphy. Now, Irving Olds Murphy was a very prominent attorney. He was extraordinarily capable. He came from Washington Township, so he represented another part of the county of Erie. And so the commission then voted to have Irving Olds Murphy as the chair of the Erie County Government Study Commission.
And we find your vice chair as well, but let's not get hung up on that, Judy. I know you're humble, and there's plenty of writing to talk that people can read and explore, where you talk about how you're a newcomer to politics, your decision behind running for this position, and your willingness to serve as vice chair. But take us to 1974 through 76, the work that you did, because it wasn't as if we installed a committee and they sat around and did nothing, or they didn't sit around at all. In fact, we see routine meetings happening throughout the region. We see engagement with the public. We see engagement with stakeholder organizations. What did that process look like to get up to the point that we could now, as citizens, be confident in knowing what's going on in the ballot and making an informed decision? What did that look like, Judy?
Very intensive. And I have a doctorate in political science. I did not at that time have it, but I can tell you that what we went through on the study commission was as intensive as any doctorate program that I ever participated in. We went into minutia. We wanted to know exactly what the relationship of the county was to the state of Pennsylvania, and then all of the functions that the county was required to do by the state of Pennsylvania. We looked at the various operations. We understood how the commissioners operated. We interviewed all sorts of people. We had administrative staff. We conducted weekly meetings. We conducted meetings in the various areas of Erie County. So it was not just in the city of Erie. We took the show on the road in a sense, because we wanted to make everybody kind of knowledgeable about this intensive process that we were going through. And again, we looked at every, I think, minutia detail of the operation of county government.
And I think it shows the dedication to that process and being thoughtful about it. Because again, I introduced this was big change. Only 4 counties had done this before. And as you so importantly noted, those counties were not close to Erie. So in this neck of the woods, we were on our own in terms of moving forward. We didn't have a neighboring county we could call up and say, how did it go for you? Let's just study that. So I think that really speaks to the process. And in 76, we see residents of Erie County affirm this. This is the direction they want to head. What was it like getting that news, Judy, the night of the election, to find out that Erie County said, okay, we believe this is the best course and we trust all of the hard work you've done?
Well, it was unbelievable. And the Vote Yes Committee, if you want to say that, was largely responsible for passing this referendum on the ballot, because they campaigned heavily. And on the Vote Yes Committee were some very, very influential people. They were totally dedicated to this process. One of the things that they believed is that Erie, and it's not just the city, but the county of Erie, was headed towards very difficult times where we would be perhaps losing population, that our industrial infrastructure was going to be attacked and undermined perhaps by technology, by other forces that were going on in the community, that we had to be ready with leadership to take a kind of an aggressive posture to do everything we could to make the economy and life in Erie County as good as possible.
Of course, if there's a vote yes committee, there's going to be a vote no committee. There were people that thought the status quo was the future, that they wanted to keep things the way they were. Why did some people dig their heels in and say, vote no against this? Let's stick with what we've got. We don't want change.
One of the things they were concerned about, the city, is the city-county kind of competition. The relationship has not always been amicable. And so there was a lot of tension between those two elements. And the question, too, came from various individuals who felt that they perhaps had something to lose. Now, what was interesting is the leadership. The leadership of the Vote No Committee came largely from the school board. But if you look at the school board of the city of Erie, it has been a cauldron for politics in the city, not just city school politics, but city of Erie politics and county of Erie politics. So you have Jim Casey, Fiore Leone, who has been the longest serving member of county council, was part of the Vote No Committee. Many others were on the Vote No Committee because they really felt that it was going to be detrimental, that taxes would be increased, that their position perhaps would, as a citizen of Erie, would be diminished.
And we do see that move through. The citizens say yes, and we see, in fact, Fiore Leone on the ballot in 1977, running for one of the newly drawn districts for county council. We see him run for that. We also see another name. We see Judith Lynch on the ballot. Why did you decide to run? This was such a challenging process. You likened the commission study to doctoral studies, to that level of intensity. I got to imagine you were exhausted, Judy, and yet here you are in 77. You put yourself on the ballot. You run for county council and win. So why did you decide to run?
I was mesmerized. And of course, I had had a political background. My father was coroner in Crawford County. My husband was involved in Democratic politics. He was chairman of the Mill Creek Democratic Party. He was a volunteer fireman. Politics was just kind of something that was part of our dinner table discussion. It was an element of our home. And so the decision to run was an easy one, but I was not sure that I was going to be successful.
So for the District 1 seat, which is largely Mill Creek Township, for the District
Yes.
1 seat, phones rang at 4 households that night. 3 of them got bad news. 1 of them got good news. You beat 3 challengers. What was it like to get that call in the Lynch household that night to find out that you had won?
Well, actually, it was 4 challengers, okay? And let me just mention their names: Ralph Madden, Tom Carley, Charles Fote, and Robert Corey-Tor. Okay, all of them well-known figures in the city and county of Erie. And they were, of course, campaigning very heavily. And Bob Corey-Tor particularly had a very high response of support in the community. So I did not think that running against 4 men, I was going to be successful, but I won, got a call from the Democratic chair, and he was laughing on the phone. This was Fisher, and what he said to me, you won by 3 votes, 3 votes.
3 votes. And anytime somebody says to somebody else, your vote doesn't matter, I know 3 votes that matter in that election and the outcome and the difference it made. So you were celebrating your success. You credited your family, your students, and volunteers. Tell me a little bit about your campaign, because you largely did a door-to-door campaign, a press the flesh campaign, and you credited students at Villa Marie High for being your cheerleaders for that. Tell us just a little bit about that campaign, Judy.
Well, the Villa students actually did support me very heavily. And I can remember one time it was at an assembly, and all of a sudden it was like, go Judy, go, go Judy, go. And, they're singing, and the support was just very absolutely, it was strong and it was very appreciated. Now, I also had support within my family, and then I am an absolute believer that door-to-door campaigning is what is the most effective. Very difficult to do in this age of the coronavirus. However, it's to knock on the door, to say hello to somebody by name, to say, introduce yourself, and to say, I am running for this position, and this is why I'm asking you for your vote. And so every day after school, I was off and campaigning, going door to door. And every time there was a convocation, there was a dinner, there was something that brought people together, I kind of intruded in until I was thrown out. But I would walk around and I would pass out something. They would be a little, maybe a little gift. It would be an emery board or something like that with my name on it, and vote for Judy Lynch.
Well, and one of the things that I find that I really enjoy about this latest installment, which is now available at jeserie.org, and we send it out, of course, in our digital emailing list as well. Folks can always sign up for that to receive these directly in your inbox. You don't have to go to our website to get them, but of course they are there on the website. Dr. Lynch, you've got fantastic pictures, letters, you've got great images that are included in this, and I want to encourage people to go and check those out. And I don't want to give away too much because really we do find ourselves concluding with now the new formation of county government. So with new government in place, from the county executive to now the county council, all first in these positions, you then were still on the clock. There was still pressure. You had 6 months by the commission's direction. You had 6 months to tackle the new requirements of this new government. What were you tackling? What did it look like? Let's end on that note here today.
Well, we had to put together a whole new personnel code, and the personnel system was a little, let's just say, chaotic within the county. So we had to take a look at it, place the people in classifications. We did have assistants. We had people that worked for the council that helped in getting material together, but the personnel code was extraordinarily important. It gave a description of the position and the amount of money that was to be paid to that person. Now there is administrative code, and the administrative code was very significant because we had eliminated some of the row offices and combined them. So now the administrative code of the County of Erie looked very different from any previous kind of sheet that would give all of the functions of county government. And so that code was important because it was the way in which the government of the County of Erie would proceed. And both of those were completed, and I'm very grateful for all of those people that helped in doing that.
And what a fascinating time, what big change, monumental change, historic change in Erie County, Pennsylvania's government, but also historic for elected women. We see from Mary Lamry to Jane Kopecki to you serving on the commission, to then you becoming elected to county council, and then of course your path forward into county executive. We'll touch on that in another episode. But Dr. Judith Lynch, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise and firsthand experience, and for taking the time, energy, and effort to share them with us here in conversation.
My great pleasure, Ben. Thank you for having me.
And of course, we're looking forward to coming back for part 5, where we'll turn some attention now to the city and some historic movements being made there. Again, a friendly reminder to read all of Dr. Lynch's series on elected women that we discussed here today, part 4, but also get caught up on part 1, 2, and 3 that move through different parts of our history, both locally and at the national level. Head over to jeserie.org. You're also going to find other reports by her and many other fascinating reads that we've been publishing, timely reads to reports to essays to more. Then you can also find more information about both upcoming and past JES programs. And of course, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For the Jefferson Educational Society, I'm Ben Spag, and be safe, be sound, and thanks for listening and learning with us.